I'm Chris.
I'm Adam.
I'm Topher.
Today we're talking about the order of pedals on your board, the do's, don'ts, and try it anyway. Who knows? Yes. So what's new, guys?
What
happened recently since last time?
So much time has passed.
Did we? I got nothing.
Does anybody have any gear news or anything?
I finished my baseboard.
Oh yes, you did.
Yeah, I did. I forgot about that.
Sounds good.
Not gear news, but yeah. So I got a Keeley Compressor Plus Sweetwater Blue Edition in trade. That's cool. So yeah, that the baseboard is now done. And my bass amp died this week. One of my bass amps died this week, so I'm working on getting the old one back and rebuilding that. That'll be fun. Yeah.
I guess I did get something too. I not really guitar stuff, but I got new preamps for my studio.
Oh,
so I've got 8 channels of Audient it's an ASP 880. I had it a few weeks ago. I just haven't said anything.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, no. You like it so far?
Yeah. It's got the first 2 channels it's an ASP 800, sorry, not 880. It's got the first 2 channels have like dialable transformers. Okay. So you can like add that like kind of heft.
Right. Yeah.
Which is cool.
It's got the switching options for them. Yeah, cool.
I've been overworked and overdadded, so nothing as normal for me.
I was gonna say you've gotten new pedals on top of that before too. Guitars.
Yeah. No, nothing.
Okay. Yeah, fun. Okay.
Chris got to hear my falsetto voice yesterday.
It was exactly what you would imagine from it. So yeah, that was something. All right. Yeah, let's move on.
We'll just leave that where it's at.
Yeah. All right. So jumping right into the original riff challenge. I am not ready for this one.
Yeah, I'm less confident about this one than the last one.
Yeah.
So today's original riff challenge is, we call it BB King Crimson. In a moment of confusion, a venue who planned to book BB King had a new staff member who was only half listening, who instead scheduled King Crimson. Since tickets were sold to BB King fans, the day of the show they managed to get him there, but due to room on the flight, he couldn't bring any of his gear. King Crimson had already been set up for the show, so to try and salvage the evening, BB King ends up using Robert Fripp's guitar rig and all of the rest of King Crimson to back him up. But he gets rather confused by all the guitar pedals and effects.
Oof.
Let's do this.
All right, call it, Adam.
Tails.
Tails, you go first.
All right. I have to say that when I made this challenge, I only was sort of familiar with King Crimson.
Sort of familiar with King Crimson. It defines my familiarity with them as well.
So I did listen to a few things. I am going to tell you that this probably isn't quite what it should be. I don't know what this is. I don't have the slow vibrato that BB King has, but yeah. Can fade out anytime. That's about it. No, it's gonna continue.
Did you do the full 5 minutes?
Yeah. I figured I'd just play that same thing over and over.
I could dig that. I could listen to that.
You win. I'll tell you that right now.
After listening to a handful of the songs, I was like, I mean, they had a guy playing the Mellotron, which is like an old keyboard that you put vinyl records into that plays sample sounds of like orchestras and stuff, and I was like, so I need bad sounding horns.
It's tape
Or
reel.
tape reel,
Tape reel.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, mine is boring. So, yeah, I found one of their slower jams, and then, yeah, we'll see. Here we go.
You were a little closer on the BB King side.
Here's my hot take for the day. It sounds real familiar to you because most of the 80s was just people trying to copy BB King over chorus guitar.
Yeah, okay.
That felt that I could definitely hear some like more Knopflerish playing in there.
Which is still just the
Yeah.
80s. Yeah, BB King. Yeah, BB King riffs lifted.
I love them both, like very different approaches to them, but
Give it to him.
I think it is Adam, but I would definitely dig hearing more of that.
Yeah.
Like that. This is probably more of what I'd like to hear, but I think yours hits closer to the money.
Yeah, I think that the guitar. I think that guitar over the weird music would be closer to the sandwich of the two.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that was just a Blues Junior.
Yeah.
What do you call it? Plug-in. That's all it was. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out like what if BB King had to play through like the fuzzes and all the crap.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
See, yeah, that's
Like,
that's what I'm hearing is like he was given a different equipment. And he's like, all right, we'll do it.
See, when I went through, I listened to like all the top King Crimson stuff on Spotify, and all I heard was either clean or chorus guitar.
Yeah.
Like no fuzz or anything.
I think I was listening to like the earliest stuff.
That I could see that, but yeah, it was mostly like what stood out was the Mellotron. You're right, like Mellotron, and then guitar was kind of secondary over top of it. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Well, how we end most of our challenge segments. I don't know.
Look, if we said anything else, that would imply we knew what we were doing.
Fair.
And we're not trying to lead people astray like that. Alright.
Our show is here to let you draw your own conclusions.
We're as confused as you.
That's why now we're going to teach you about how to order your pedal board.
That's a great intro segment, actually, yeah. So speaking of not knowing what you're doing...
Hey, we don't know what's going on. Here's how to order your pedals.
We got a bunch of guitar pedals here.
And I think that we can lead it in pretty well with... there are no rules. We don't know what we're doing. Just do what you want. The end.
Yeah.
No, let's...
So is that the whole segment?
That's it.
That's it. We just set this stuff out here for show.
So... That does bring up these are more of guidelines. It's like Pirates Code.
Yeah.
This is more of guidelines rather than hard and fast rules. Adam, do you want to start us off in talking about pedal order and what is the traditional method?
I think we talk about traditional I think because a lot of people have a pedal. If you're watching, you probably are into guitar pedals, and so I think we talk about kind of the standard order roughly, and not that there are any rules. And then the stuff that we're going to show and play, though, we're going to try and do things that are not the typical, just so you get an idea of what they are. Because I don't know about you, but me, when I put stuff on the board, I don't usually think about putting them in different orders. I'm always like, it's got to be, my compressor, and then it's got to be my drives, and then, it's just that. So I'm never like, wait, let me put this here.
Yeah, just to see what happens. And it does depend on the style, right?
For sure.
Depending on what you play, it might not make sense to run, reverb into delay or something weird.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
So normal order. I mean, you tell me agree, disagree. I mean, I usually would start if I have like an old school fuzz, I would put that first. Right. But if I don't, then I'm typically going into my tuner first, so I have a mute, and then I would go into a compressor if I'm using one. Then any kind of drives and gain staging, boost sometimes before or after, depending if I want to make my distorted or overdriven tone more so, or if I want to be louder afterwards, for a lead boost. And then after that, typically I'm going into like modulation, and then verbs and delays. But sometimes modulation is after reverb. It depends.
And sometimes I know a lot of, especially on like older classic rock stuff, you generally want to use your phaser. Phaser will be beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it does depend on the type.
Yeah. Modulation placement is I think a point of not contention, but like there's a lot of places you can put some of that stuff.
It's like adding spices to cooking. It's very much a taste kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you said modulation. Then where do we go?
Then, I mean, delay, then reverb. Typically, I mean, if I have an amp with reverb, I mean, and the delay pedal's in line, it's not an effects loop. You're putting your delay into your reverb, so it's typically the order I would go in. If you do stick a wah in there, there's definitely some. Is it before or after your fuzz kind of thing?
Yeah. Or do you push your volume pedal?
And that's another point. Yeah, so I tend to put a volume pedal at the beginning because I like to be able to control everything. But
so that's something I've changed recently. So I used to run mine at the beginning too. Now I put it post drive pre-modulation.
Okay.
So that way, whatever gain staging I want is set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I need to back off, like, because if I kick on like. I have the JHS double barrel, and it has the hot mode. If I kick on the hot mode and I'm not paying attention, and for some reason I haven't set that volume right, it skyrockets, and I want to back that off, but I don't want to back off the gain.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. And then you talked about a delay and reverb. Yeah, I've been back and forth on those. I ran the Verbotrem and the Flint into reverb first into a DD8 or a DD500 at one time. And yet, I don't hear much of a difference. I mean, I know there's a difference in isolation. I hear it, but in a context of a band, oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of the same with like some of the modulation, like a tremolo, like being whether it's before or after your reverb. Because especially if it's like one of those like old square way kind of hard chopping tremolos, if you have it after the reverb, you can actually cut the reverb trails back and forth. Or if you put it in front of it, then you're.
And then there's those particular people, right, who like want it sent into the amp before it's actually sent out into the reverb, right? Like people send effects in.
Are we talking about effects loops?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that, like people are really particular. Like it shouldn't go through the pedals and then into the amp. It needs to come out, go into the amp, and then come back out.
Yeah, a lot of people. So we call this 4-cable method, and it's pretty common with like higher gain amps too. I think, and generally, like if you run like a delay pedal or a reverb into the front end of like a 5150 or something real heavy like a Mesa Dual Rec or whatever, like that reverb gets super distorted and washy.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's why they do that. Is they'll put you'll run your drive pedals into the front of the amp, and then in that effects loop will be your time-based effects. So that part is clean, and that's how you get like those real nice like. What's a good example? Like I think the Top Gun theme, so Ingve, where it's the very distorted lead strat tone, and it's just clean reverb on top of it. That's what that does.
So like an effects loop falls between the preamp and the power amp section of a guitar amp. So if you put your reverbs, your delays, or modulation in the effects loop, then all that extra gain that you're hitting from the preamp section, that's not you're not pushing that gain with your reverb.
So for someone who plays plays mostly clean, it's not really an issue for someone like for me.
Not really at all. In fact, like even I would say on like mid crunch where when I play with you guys, this is where I usually live. Like, I don't hear a whole lot of a difference. Like, there is, yeah. But it's not usually a big enough deal that I think it matters all that much.
Yeah.
So and like this kind of brings up a point. Like, your overdrive, distortion, all those pedals are effectively preamps anyway.
Okay.
Like, there's no difference really, arguably, between a distortion pedal and the preamp section of your amp rather than it being tube or transistor. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you can really think of it the same way. Yeah. Like, if you run a reverb before a distortion pedal, that's what that is. And we can demonstrate what that sounds like.
So our first demo or our first demonstration, we're actually running things really backwards. We've got guitar, which is a Mustang.
I know Topher's gonna want. Oh. Okay, no, you're there.
And it's actually going into a reverb first, Hall of Fame, and then into a delay, which is flashback, and then into the drive. So we'll do a reverb into overdrive first, just to kind of give you an idea what that sounds like.
Like we said at the beginning, it should be pointed out, like, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, it definitely has a sound, and for everything we say, like, this is how it is, somebody's gonna point out an exception. Like, you could do My Bloody Valentine pretty well with this. You could do Sonic Youth, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, this is definitely like a post rock or shoegaze, whatever.
Bring me out, and again, what's the order?
So you're running into a reverb and then a distortion pedal in this case.
Okay, yeah, that's why I don't like it. I don't really like it.
So it washes out your reverb tone, and it definitely like discolors it in lots of ways.
So yeah, there's just your reverb and delay. Which reverb and delay is fine. And then we're gonna kick on gain.
So now Topher is he's going into the overdrive distortion, then into delay, and then into reverb. And we'll share photos of what all the gear is, but it's an Electro Harmonics Cran, a TC Electronic Flashback, and a TC Electronic Hall of Fame 2.
I think that it's what I'm expecting.
Yes.
The thing I think that the biggest noticeable difference in those two orders are that in this context, the definition of your guitar playing is much more like noticeable. Like, I think in the reverse where we had it, like, say if you were in context playing with a drummer and a bass, it's a lot harder to keep with someone when it's kind of that ambient wash. But it might, in a certain context, if you were trying to add like auxiliary sound over the top and like space things out, then maybe it's useful.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on what function of guitar are you using. Mm-hmm. A lead, a rhythm, or like you said, auxiliary.
I hear a lot of those weird orders, and like when you're using like what's the thing, like where you use like a volume pedal to do the swells, like a lot of times the people will purposely switch up that stuff and then put a volume pedal at the end. They'll do those real washy, like background ambient sounds. That happens quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen occasionally too where people have like a normal order of things, but then like I might see an extra gain pedal after like some verbs and delays that's not always on, but like when you want that sound, then you have it without having to mix your board up.
Right. And you and I had talked off camera about this. Like loop switchers make a big difference. So on the fly, you can put stuff in different orders as you like.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, that makes things a little more complicated, but it is an option.
Yeah, if you're going all the way with lots of pedals, then yeah.
I got a question for you. Where do you put an EQ pedal?
That depends on the purpose.
All right.
I don't know. So like an EQ, and I don't typically have one, although sometimes like some pedals, like you use them partly as an EQ if they have a good EQ section. But like really, I mean, you can put an EQ, say, after your drive and use it for a boost for volume, and then also use the EQ to sculpt. So like say you're taking a solo and you need to cut through the mix differently, you can do that. But you can also put it before your drive to change the shape of that drive, especially if you have something that has like either if it's a good drive, but it's either like way lacking in mids, or it has a like ridiculous mid hump or something where you have to make it fit better. You can reshape that tone. So there's a few options there.
Yeah, I think historically I've used it pre-drive, I think. And they say you shouldn't, but I mean, like, whatever, I do what I want. They say you shouldn't use it to correct problems, like EQing problems in your amp and guitar. But like that, I think, when I'm going direct, like with the DSM simplifier into a PA system, like, I choose my own EQ. I don't leave that up to the sound guy. You know what I mean?
That's fair. I mean, to me, like an EQ feels like, and it always feels, in most cases, it's a tool, right? I was actually thinking about, I think about this kind of stuff when I'm driving sometimes. I was actually thinking, not in terms of pedals, but I was thinking about just equalizers in terms of like, say, like studio gear, right? Your rack mount kind of things, or even like plugins, and like, they kind of fall into two camps anyways. You either have your EQ is, to me, it's kind of like a tool, where this is like it's a pair of scissors and a hammer, and where you're either cutting frequencies out or you're expanding them, right? Yep. So that's a tool side. But then some of the older, like really analog, with a few knobs on them and tubes, like those are like you turn it on and it's better. And like the EQs themselves, like they do cut a little and boost, but a lot of times it's just almost like coloring. It's like a box of crayons more than it is a tool at that point.
Yeah, and I think the Deco kind of goes that direction. It's more of like an added, like it's not an EQ per se, but it does have an EQ curve, and it's designed to add that coloration to your sound.
Oh yeah, that's another one on my list of regrets of getting rid of, because that was a really good pedal.
So Strymon Deco, they make this pedal that it makes your guitar sound like like it's been through a tape machine.
Oh, cool.
So like you don't have to record the tape. You can just put this at the end, hit go. And because it also does that, it can be multi-track tape, so you can make your own chorus effects with it. Yeah.
It does like the double tracking thing, like the old Beatles, like where you want to sound like you played the guitar twice, but they're just slightly out of time with each other, so it sounds thick.
Does it actually use any tape? Or is
Nope. Just all digital.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you get the ones that do the tape,
That's
With a name like Strymon.
Yeah.
It has to be digital.
Well, fair. With a name like Strymon, it has to be expensive. I think $3.99, something like that.
They're not cheap, but they're
$3.99.
Well, I'm sure that if you go on Wish.com, they will be happy to get you a clone of it.
There you go.
I don't think I'll even get you like a clone on Wish anymore.
$13 gets you a clone clone.
Klondike bar.
Yeah, Klondike bar. There you go. I bought the premium one, thank you. I bought mine off eBay for $23.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
Okay, so where are we at now?
We're just talking about. So I asked you about EQ. What you got? Any questions on pedal order? I feel like most of this stuff's kind of straightforward.
Yeah, most of this,
Yeah.
I'm not too curious. The EQ is something that I wasn't like. I haven't touched EQ at all.
So EQ is cool because, like you said, it depends on the context you use it. You can actually also use it as a specific boost. So like if you want to, instead of like, hey, I need something versatile for a boost pedal or versatile for an overdrive pedal, like I can just crank that up and then crank up specific frequencies.
What if you put it after your mods?
You absolutely can do that. In fact, I probably would run it after my mods. Yeah.
Yep. That's a lot like, to me, like if you put it from like when I'm mixing like a session, if I've got like a couple of my favorite reverbs on buses to send to different channels, a lot of times on that bus with the reverb, right after it is an EQ, because you don't always want to have massive low end or certain frequencies of reverb like just drowning your track.
Right.
So I could absolutely see putting an EQ in spots like where you're like, I don't want to have that much of this.
Yeah. Just make little spot changes as necessary. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's put in lots of spots.
All right, so we're talking about octave next, and where to run octave. Let's give a little taste of what octave sounds like.
There's octave by itself. This is Electro Harmonics micro pog, or is it micro? Yeah.
God, I love this pedal.
Yep. So it's just octave up and octave down and dry, all kind of right in the middle right now.
So, does anybody know what does this go for online right now?
A regular pog.
Yeah.
So you can get the nano pog.
Yeah, because the nano pod, like, it can handle the like multi.
Polyphonic.
Yeah, the nano and the micro very similar. I mean, most of these are very similar.
So $200 new for the the nano pog, $160,
That's not bad.
and then you can pay for a firm through it for
Yeah.
$160. Yeah. Yeah. So
I really need to look into it soon. Because I've got that Behringer octave pedal in it.
it's monophonic. Yeah.
They don't quite track.
Yeah, I need that. Because I'm too sloppy of a player to do.
There's a lot of options.
We were talking about this yesterday. I got the 7-Up Mini, which was like $70 new from Sweetwater. But it's not polyphonic, I'm pretty sure. But I use it on bass.
Thank you.
Maybe
I thought it was polyphonic.
Maybe it is polyphonic, but it's cheap. You could probably find them on Reverb for $50. Yeah, it's like, but it's TC. But yeah, like, it seems to work pretty well. It works real well on bass.
I don't know about the mini. I think the big one. I think that one has like a selection. The middle selection. I think you can do. I think it's like polyphonic, monophonic, or like the tone print thing. I think I know it's got a selector for 3 things. I feel like I had one at one point, and I don't remember which. I've gone through a lot of octave pedals. Now that I've had the Pog, I've never had another one. But
TC 7-Up. Okay, so full size 7-Up. Oh, you can get a full size 7-Up for $80 on Reverb right now, and polyphonic.
Okay.
It does so up down polyphonic. Yeah, I might switch mine out for this eventually. Yeah.
Maybe I'll look into that then.
Yeah, those are cool. But octave pedal. Where does it go in the chain?
So in the context that we're talking about, like right now we've got basically the octave, and then we're going into a fuzz by Earthquaker Spires. And then we get the reverb on for nice room. But yeah, exactly. Typically, traditionally, the octave tends to go before the drive like that, before the fuzz. Now you could do it either way.
Well, why is that?
Why is that?
Yeah, why octave? Why octave?
Because there are no rules.
Fair enough.
I think it's about clarity, but
yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with digital tracking, maybe.
Yeah. I think it's probably the fact that if you put a really gross fuzz in front of it, it's gonna have a hard time reading your fundamental
It
pitch.
doesn't know what to do with it.
It's like
yeah. So I had, and I really liked it. I had a Mr. Black octaves pedal.
Oh yeah, they make cool stuff.
Yeah, they had a mini pedal that I had, and it just even on like first in the chain with bass, it did not track. It didn't track very well. I shouldn't say that. It just there was enough of a delay that you could feel it, and it felt off.
Yeah, I could see that.
For guitar, I think it was probably fine, but yeah, it's one of those that they can be a little finicky.
Oh, yeah.
I think depending on what kind you get.
Well, I think there's if you're familiar with the MXR Blue Box at all, it's been around forever. But that's like purpose. I mean, it's an octave down fuzz pedal, and it ping pongs like mad if you try and play even sometimes monophonic lines, like solo lines. Even then, it sometimes ping pongs, but it's like it's a sound. It's an effect, that it does. The fact that it does that.
That's fair.
But here's octave. So let's hear octave into some fuzz, into some drive. So I think we should switch those, and just to show what happens when you have a lot of gain going into an octave. So here is fuzz into octave.
Fuzz into octave.
Just try things, because traditional sense would generally say you're going to put your octave first, and generally, but I thought that sounded way cooler.
Yeah,
like that.
And surprisingly, I thought it would. I haven't tried that, but I thought it would track more poorly.
Yeah, and it sounded
seemed
great.
fine.
Yeah.
Did
it feel weird at all?
At first, I think a little bit. But it's mainly because I played that riff, but not with that sound, so that's why it felt weird.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, no, it felt better to me this way.
What kind of fuzz pedal is this based off of?
The Spires has two sides. It's like two pedals in one.
Oh.
It's Earthquaker. The one side is more or less a fuzz face.
Okay. Which generally like to be first in a chain.
Yeah, and then the other side is
not a fuzz face.
Not a fuzz face. It's another similar older fuzz style.
So which one would we just use?
The side you were just on was a fuzz face.
That makes more sense. That's
Yeah.
why it makes more sense.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not like a old school fuzz face, so you can get away with
okay.
Yeah, because an old school fuzz face is generally going to be germanium. It's going to be...
Yeah. This is all silicon.
Yeah. So that does bring up another point when we say fuzz goes first in the chain.
Yeah.
What kind of fuzz are you using?
We're talking about we're talking about vintage style, germanium 2 and 3 transistor type stuff.
Yes. So if it's a big muff, we don't have to worry about that.
If you have like a big muff, honestly, it doesn't matter that much. I mean,
No, yeah, I remember when you first told me that, and I switched it because I switched it around in my board because I had my fuzz right next to my gain, and when I switched it around, it made the biggest world difference.
Well, and if you ever AB like the big muff and the fuzz face too, like when we talked about the volume roll off stuff before, control of that. I mean, it'll change things a little with the big muff. It doesn't really affect it much. Where a fuzz face, it dramatically affects it. That's just the interplay.
Cool.
Just the interplay.
And I think was it Tone Bender is probably the same way, right? It's going to be
Similar,
affected. Yeah, it's going to be affected. Your Red Witch. No, your Red Witch.
Red
is
Witch,
what?
that's a big muff.
That is a big muff. Okay.
Sorry,
Fuzz face.
It's a fuzz face.
Yeah, but David. So y'all should go back and watch our episode with David Wynn on fuzz.
Hey,
Yeah.
he's another callback.
There we go. There we go. Deep dive into that stuff.
Yes. So yeah, if you want to talk about different fuzz types, check out the Hizamitas, which is a Big Muff clone and sounded great no matter where it gets
for
stuck. Sure. Yeah. So that is one big exception to anything we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's octave at least. Do you
Yeah.
want to go to wah?
So let's talk about wah. All right. So now we're going to talk about wah pedal placement. We right now we're going into a Crybaby Mini and then into an Electro Harmonics Cran distortion. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to do the distortion into the Crybaby afterwards, so you get a feel for the reverse. So here's distorted tone.
Nice. I'm getting rid of my auto wah, and I'm just gonna have Adam just do that whenever I do a solo.
I'm available for hire if you need a wah manipulator for the evening. Oh, that sounds bad.
Oh, that's
Just a call back to the title for the episode.
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
All right, so wah.
So that is wah before distortion,
Yeah, which is a traditional way of doing things.
which is also where you hear more wah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like
Typically,
I rarely would hear it post unless it's fuzz.
yeah.
But it's a very classic sound, obviously. Yeah, we want to switch over and see what the opposite
Yeah.
of that sounds like. All right.
Go ahead. So wah. Go ahead. All right. So wah after distortion. Wah effect much more dramatic.
So I actually kind of. This goes back to using an EQ. If we had an EQ after that, I probably would almost prefer that one.
I kind of agree.
Yeah.
It lets you highlight the fact that you're using a wah a lot more.
Yeah. Or even if you had it into a darker amp, like if I was running that through one of your Fenders, that would probably work really nicely, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you want to, and if you're doing the whole cocked wah like thing to, especially if you're like on a distorted thing, and you're just trying to be like, oh, I want to cut through the mix right now. Let me set it in the spot.
I'll be straight with you. I don't usually care for that sound. Like
Yeah.
I love wah. Like I have abused wah a lot, but I don't like the cocked wah sound. I don't know what it is. I know it helps you cut through, but it's not for me.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's so like Frank Zappa was one to do this. Some others too. It's where you like for your lead tone, you're turning your wah and you're going, okay, it's in this spot.
Yeah.
And you're using it to just basically as a mid-frequency EQ.
I see it.
At that point.
So can we?
No, I don't. I've tried it before, and
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically what it turns into is just an EQ just for your mids.
Yeah. You can do it with an EQ pedal too.
Yes. You can just leave everything flat and just adjust your mids.
Yeah. Or you can get a tube screamer.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's wah. Do you have anything else?
The only other things I have on my list, if you want to do these, are modulation placements and compression being before or after your drives.
Compression is going to be so boring. We don't.
Yeah, we don't have to do that one. Let's not do that. All that. We can sum that up. Yeah, compressor before your drives. adds sustain if you want it to, and it can still squish things if you want to. Compression after your overdrives makes everything noisy.
Yeah, it can. It's true.
But it's true.
You should try it for yourself.
Yeah.
We're not going to try it here because by the time we get this processed and uploaded to YouTube, YouTube's going to add its own compression, and it's not going to be much of a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I guess I will say that one thing with a compressor later in the chain, if you're a person who doesn't really use drives, if you're a clean player, you can put a compressor at the end if you just need to even out your tone and keep things from getting out of hand.
Still before time.
Yeah.
Based effects, arguably, but yeah.
Yeah. But I tend to think they go best before drives.
Yeah, early in the chain somewhere. I agree. Yeah. All right. Cool.
So modulation thoughts.
Modulation is a thought. So we've talked a lot about modulation recently. All right.
So now we are back to the Electro-Harmonix Cran just for a distortion tone, and then we're going into the UA Astra modulation machine, and still got the Hall of Fame for some ambience. We've got it set to a chorus, so this is just this is just a clone of the original chorus from Boss Roland. Yeah, before we switch, you wanna So we're gonna go through all the modulations that we have here post distortion, and then we'll flip it and show you what happens.
It's like a throwback episode.
So now we are onto the flanger. There's that 70s jet fuel flanging. The next one is tremolo. All right, so this is just a standard like Fender style tremolo. Okay. This is now we got this. I think this one's phaser. I think this is supposed to just be like a phase 90 basically.
It sounds like a phase 90.
Yeah, it's called like the Dharma phaser, they called it, I think, setting, so. Cool. Do you want harmonic tremolo or no? Okay. Okay. Harmonic tremolo. Yeah. Cool. So let's switch them around.
All right.
So now we're going modulation into distortion, same order. So this is chorus. That's
leave it a little bit.
horrible.
Keep going.
Horrible.
Oof.
As soon as I hit it, I was like,
All right, flanger. This is going to be better.
I hate it.
Pass.
Don't make me keep doing it.
Phaser.
This is tremolo.
Oh, tremolo. Like this tremolo early in the chain is something that people used to do.
Yep.
Like that's not an uncommon. Granted, I generally like tremolo without drive at all.
Yeah,
But
to me, I like tremolo always just it pairs well with nice reverb and clean. Just like it would be in an amp. That's my ears.
Compressed Telecaster.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something, if it called for it, it would be alright. I'm okay with it, but other than that,
Yeah.
I didn't like any of that.
It's the best of the.
I think the only time I really like a lot of drive with a tremolo is if it's for an effect where you're using like more of a hard chop tremolo and you're just cutting your signal,
Right.
so it's more of like a slice.
Now, I do use harmonic tremolo with drive, but only because it doesn't make that much of a difference half the
Yeah.
time, and I don't want to have to hit two pedals in the middle of a solo.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's do phaser into it, I guess.
Now we can probably crank the gain back up a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty standard thing. Phaser is normal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Hendrix did it.
Univibe, yeah.
Univibe, yeah. But phaser is what you expect to hear before, and this is
That's how I remember.
this is what we kind of talked about, like during the modulation episode, where you're saying like some of it doesn't make a whole lot of a difference, and if you're playing just clean guitar through maybe like low flanger or through phaser, might not sound a whole lot different. But right there with the drive pedal, holy crap!
Big difference.
Yeah, big difference.
And if you guys want to know more about all the modulation stuff, definitely check out the modulation episode we did. Lastly is harmonic tremolo. I can see in certain contexts how that's useful. Like it's interesting when he was like muting it more. It almost gave it more of a wah effect. You heard the harmonic movement, but then when you really driving into it, then the tremolo popped out.
I think that's another thing to point out, though, is like all these things matter of like how you're playing. I'm playing chords throughout most of this.
Yeah.
I'm not a flashy guitarist, but like some of these things, like as played as lead effects over top of other things, it might sound really good with
This is speed basically all the way down and tense in depth all the way up basically.
I was thinking like, so generally with a lot of quicker lead stuff anyway, most people don't even bother putting a lot of this on because it really doesn't make up. Like when you're playing quick notes, you don't hear any of it anyway.
But like
Flanger maybe.
Lead isn't necessarily quick. Like,
Yeah.
There's all
Yeah.
forms of lead. Like
Fair
if it's
enough.
a slower, I suppose like let's see, auxiliary, like
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
sounds, like to add different sounds.
Anyway,
All right.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But basically, do whatever you want.
I think that's the biggest takeaway from this is like
Experiment.
we switch things around from the normal way they did it a lot. People do it a lot in this, and we tended to like the non-traditional ways of doing it.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but I know like with some of those when we turn them on, like my face, I was like, oh, huh,
Yeah.
because I have some of the stuff we're doing here is not typically how I plug things in, so it's interesting to play with.
You have it in your mind, like, this is going to sound weird, but then you put it, wow, that's cool. I could use that for something.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it like I said, context does make a difference. A lot of guys, and I think there's a good chunk of our listeners who are just trying to like people who play in cover bands, people who play traditional stuff, generally want a traditional like this is how it's done. That's not always the case.
Yeah,
that's just not how it works. Yeah, but okay, yeah. So I guess we're moving on then.
Yeah, moving on.
All right, so moving on to our featured artist of the week. So remember, guys, if you are on the YouTube side, just so our guest doesn't get copyright struck, you'll hear the quick video, but then you'll have to go down to the description to get the actual link to her music. If you're on the audio side of the podcast, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever, then the song will be played at the end. This week's featured artist is Lexi Pfeiffer, and over to her.
Hey guys, Lexi Pfeiffer here. Thanks so much for featuring my song Myself Without You on Wood, Wire, and Watts. I wrote and recorded this song in the summer of 2020 at Heartache Studios in Fort Wayne with Adam Baker. So featured on the song, we've got Kyle Smith on drums, Theo Garcia on trumpet, Tommy Saw on keys, myself on guitar, Adam Baker on bass, and then my sister coming in with some backing vocals. Her name is Kylie Fisher. So that was really special to have my younger sister on the record with me. Also featured at the end of the tune, there's like a chorus of vocals you hear, and that is a bunch of my friends from back home. So it's Josh Ayers, everyone who was involved in the recording session, Megan Swadner, a few other friends. So yeah, it's a great time to record. I wrote the song while I was driving, which I know is like not what you're supposed to do, but that's why Steve Jobs invented voice notes, I guess. Anyway, I was writing the song when I was driving down the highway after a breakup, windows down, just kind of cruising and doing my own thing, and that was the feeling I wanted to capture on the song, as well as like kind of leaning more into some of my influences from people like Lake Street Dive and all of the stuff that came out of like the Muscle Shoals area in the 60s. So yeah, that's kind of what I was going for, that kind of vibe with this song. I hope you guys enjoy it, and thanks for listening.
And for anybody who's listening that is a recording artist, somebody who does music, whether it's locally, regionally, wherever you're at, if you have a song that you want to see featured on the show, you can send us a short video and let us know.
woodwirewatts@gmail.com.
Yes. And yeah, we'd be interested in hearing what you guys have, and if it's a great song, we'll feature it.
Send anything you got our way. Like, doesn't matter, it's genre specific. We're just wanting to showcase everyone's talent. Doesn't matter.
Yep. Cool. So other than that, our Patreon is up. We have a bunch of offerings on the Patreon starting at $1 a month. We also have our Teespring store now up. I think we featured them last week, but Topher did some awesome shirts.
Oh
It's right behind Chris there.
Yep. There we go.
Yeah, we got another one.
I made this.
So yeah,
This seems familiar.
this I believe is a limited run.
Yes.
So get them quick. We also have the regular circle logo that Topher designed.
I drew each of us as a cartoon character.
I forgot about those ones too. Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's cool. There's also up on the Teespring store, I believe, coffee mugs, hats, all sorts of fun stuff. So go over and check that out. That's all we got for this week. All right, that's it, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Woodwire and Watts. Until next time, tune up.
Crank the volume.
And let it rip.